US President Donald Trump said that he would increase tariffs on neighbouring Canada to 35%.
Ursula von der Leyen and her Commission survived a motion of censure tabled against her by the far right in the European Parliament on Thursday. EU officials rejected by Haftar. Should Brussels re-enter into dialogue with the Libyan Marshal?
US President Donald Trump said that he would increase tariffs on neighbouring Canada to 35%. He said these tariffs were aimed at pressuring Canada to curb fentanyl trafficking, despite limited evidence of significant flows, and to address what he described as unfair trade practices. The letter, addressed to Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney, marks a sharp increase from the 25% tariffs which Trump imposed in March. Carney was elected to office in April on a platform of assertive foreign policy. Since then, he sought to distance Canada from the US while seeking to strengthen its ties with the European Union and the UK. Canada has previously responded to earlier tariffs with retaliatory measures and pushed back against Trump's repeated jabs, including that Canada could become the 51st US state.
Together with international efforts to boost both private and public investment in Ukraine's reconstruction, Russia's latest wave of unprecedented attacks against Ukraine has dominated discussions here at the fourth edition of Ukraine's recovery conference that is taking place here in Rome. In June alone, Russia launched around 5,500 drones against Ukraine, a record number. Now, on the first day of the conference, Ukrainian President Zelensky, speaking to journalists, said that as Russia wants to continue the war, unity among countries is the only way to stop the fighting. He also said that it's important to have guarantees in the next round of negotiations and not just words. And he stressed the importance of reaching an agreement among Western partners on the need to increase drone production. Now, we know that a few days ago, US President Donald Trump said that he will send more weapons to Ukraine after early reports had suggested that the US was going to halt some shipments. Zelensky confirmed in the press conference that he had discussed the Patriot missile system with US President Donald Trump, something that Ukraine sees as crucial to defend itself against Russian attacks. Now, on the first day of the conference, according to official figures, around 8,300 people took part in the event, which is going to continue on Friday, which is the second and last day of the conference. Giorgio Orlandi for Euronews in Rome.
At least 2 people were killed on Thursday and 16 others injured after Russia attacked Kyiv, the Ukrainian capital, with another mass missile and drone attack. According to Ukrainian officials, the overnight attack reportedly caused fires across the city and came a day after the heaviest aerial attack of the 3-year war so far. Rescue workers worked on Thursday at a residential district in Kyiv after falling debris caused a fire on the top floor of an apartment building, according to Ukrainian officials. Russia had fired more than 700 attack and decoy drones at Ukraine, topping previous nightly barrages for the third time in 2 weeks. Many residents in the Ukrainian capital sought refuge in underground metro stations. The attack comes as the Trump administration resumed sending some weapons to Ukraine. The Pentagon had previously directed that weapons shipments be paused. Russia's military has not commented on the reported latest attack.
Russian President Vladimir Putin has signed a decree allowing foreigners to serve in the Russian army, not only during a state of emergency or martial law, but also during draft periods. Moscow has recently intensified its summer offensive against Ukraine. Allowing foreigners to serve in the army would therefore strengthen the recruitment process while avoiding formal conscription. According to a British intelligence update, the majority of foreign recruits came from South and East Asia. The UK Ministry of Defence suggested the main factors motivating foreigners to sign up are financial incentives and the possibility of obtaining Russian citizenship.
The European Commission survived a no-confidence vote that has just been voted here in the European Parliament in Strasbourg. 175 members of the Parliament voted in favor of the motion of censure, while 360 voted against and 18 abstained. The motion of censure was well below the votes needed, the threshold needed to be successful, which was 2/3 of the votes cast. Representing at least the majority of the total number of the MEPs. So 360 votes were needed to topple the Commission. But most of the political groups of the European Parliament backed the Commission by rejecting this motion of censure. Of course, the European People's Party voted unanimously against, but also the Socialists and Democrats, Renew Europe and the Greens voted against, even with some abstentions. The far-right groups, Patriots for Europe and the Europe of Sovereign Nations, as well as large part of the European Conservatives and Reformists and some delegation of the left, voted against the Commission, so in favor of the motion of censure. So for the moment, Ursula von der Leyen, which was not present in the hemicycle during the vote, is safe. But the vote and the debate previous to the vote has left some doubts about the support for her agenda here in the Parliament. Vincenzo Genovese, Euronews, Strasbourg.
More than 500 migrants were transferred to the port of Lavrio near Athens on Thursday after being intercepted south of the island of Crete. The migrants, mainly young men, were transferred overnight on a bulk carrier. Another group of 200 people were transferred to the port of Piraeus near the capital in a separate operation from Crete. The migrants will be sent to detention facilities on mainland Greece. Transfers to the mainland were ordered because makeshift reception centers on Crete have reached capacity as migrant arrivals surged to 500 per day since the weekend. It also comes after Prime Minister Kyriakos Mitsotakis announced the implementation of emergency measures to address the surge in Mediterranean crossings from Libya. Mitsotakis also announced on Wednesday that Athens will suspend asylum processing for migrants arriving by sea from North Africa for 3 months. The new emergency measures are expected to go into effect following the completion of a final formal proceeding. The EU's Ursula von der Leyen, meeting with Mediterranean leaders in Rome, agreed on the need to reactivate the Team Europe initiative with a new delegation of the European Commission to redeploy to Libya to tackle the ongoing migrant crisis. The meeting, which also featured Greek Prime Minister Kyriakos Mitsotakis, Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni, and Maltese Prime Minister Robert Abella, was held on the sidelines of the Ukraine Recovery Conference. The leaders agreed to bolster efforts to crack down on the surge of migrant boats arriving at European shores, largely originating from Libya. The Commission delegation will also be accompanied by relevant ministers from Greece, Italy, and Malta. They will redeploy to Libya to hold talks with authorities on the worsening crisis after the previous mission was expelled from the country. Greece says it's been intercepting boats carrying hundreds of migrants daily along its shores, all of which originate from Libya. Athens has introduced emergency measures to tackle the surge in migration, recently announcing a suspension in asylum processing for migrants from North Africa. A spokesperson for the European Commission says Brussels is committed to helping its member states address the crisis and will offer all support necessary to combat what they called an exceptional situation. Trap or strategic error? Why did the EU want to meet Marshal Haftar, the strongman of eastern Libya? The Commissioner for Migration and 3 European ministers were expelled from Libya on Tuesday due to a protocol problem, according to Brussels. After a meeting with the Libyan government in Tripoli, the European delegation was supposed to meet Marshal Haftar in Benghazi, but Haftar reportedly tried to force the EU's hand by imposing the presence of his ministers.
It was simply a ruse by Haftar to try to legitimize this government in the civilian face of his military dictatorship. And so when the ruse didn't work, and when the EU ambassador and other diplomats said that they are unable to meet with the government, well, Haftar, as the English say, he threw his toys out of the pram. He PNG'd the European diplomats and essentially sent them back to Europe because he was not able to use them for this political charade that he was trying to pull off.
Libya is divided in two. In the west of the country, the UN-recognized Government of National Unity is led by Prime Minister Abdelhamid Dbeibeh. The east is controlled by his rival Marshal Khalifa Haftar, head of the self-proclaimed Libyan National Army. The European Union cooperates with Libya to combat illegal immigration and smuggling networks. In recent years, crossings to Europe from eastern Libya have been on the rise.
The EU has been collaborating both from the EU and from the member states, especially from Italy, with the Libyan Coast Guard in the west to try to somehow cut down the flows of migration. And the EU has also been supporting the efforts of the Libyans to take back the migrants once they're back on Libyan soil. That, of course, has been controversial because there's been a lot of questions about their human rights, about the treatment that they receive when they're in Libya.
However, there are questions about the EU's need to meet Marshal Haftar.
We are empowering a Russian proxy who is antagonistic to European interests. And so, once we clear away all of the mess of the current crisis, it becomes quite clear that what Europe really needs in Libya is a stable government and a sovereign government.
In particular, he accuses the Haftar family of using migration as a tool to obtain concessions from the EU. In recent days, Greek islands have seen a large influx of migrants from Libya.